Obahi bebre, ano poku are no mawano. Asante kotokono no. Soni ebedi akwa abua ho. Etuone tone sakra bua nkwa. Yedi etiribeto ho.
If there's a fact that human beings have had to accept rather reluctantly, it is the fact that at the end of the day, we all die.
Asabino frititio. Efrititio odmankuma. Adia no yamfa anto de da. Na efrato.
Dying is a process that actually begins the moment we are born, if you think about it practically. And because of this, in the traditional African society, we were reminded to make sure that we make each day count.
Odmankuma ba adie. Oba asante kotoko kunfo. Oku afrana nanom. Yaku anu oshe. Kotoko jemi bi okunfo ne yai.
We are also reminded that death is not the end of everything. There was life after death. That is why when someone died, apart from the mourning and the sadness, it was a celebration.
There is a country on the western continent of Africa rumored to have the happiest funerals in the world. But in what way can loss turn into a celebration?
Dirges in the traditional African society was sung to mark the death of an individual. We could sing to announce the death that was done by mostly women. And in most instances, if the person who had died had many wives, it was the first wife who was supposed to announce their death. In certain instances, in the traditional African society, professional mourners were actually hired to embellish these funerals and to make them be memorable. This phenomenon was seen in many communities all over the world.
On Wednesday night, the best professional mourners came. For the more important dead, they travel all the way from Olyena, Fone, and Uzule. They applied themselves so strenuously to their lamenting and weeping that at midnight they could be heard for miles.
We see that even presently when we have professional mourners, for example, those from Ghana.
Some people don't know how to cry. Some people, when they lost their relatives, they don't know how to talk and cry. My name is Amido Klee. I'm a funeral contractor. People came in to pick me to go to their funeral and cry for them.
And we've even seen this in Kenya, where we have professional mourners hired to make funerals memorable.
Professional mourners are becoming more popular throughout the world. The practice is exactly what it sounds like. And basically, you hire actors to come to a funeral and pretend to care.
Serikali watusaidie, watupee permit na license, tukue recognized kama Professional Mourners Association ya Kenya, ambapo wapeleke hii mswada hata kwa bunge wa discuss, wajue tuko hapa na we are here to stay.
We've also seen this with the dancing pallbearers of Ghana, who have become something of a social media sensation. Dirges were also sung to mark the beginning of a mourning period. Different societies treated deaths differently depending on the person who had died. If the person who had died was a child, then most societies buried them as quickly as possible. But if the person who had died was old or had a very important position in the society, then there would be a longer mourning period. So Dirges also marked the beginning of this mourning period.
Mbai na chebe dire kwoku na mbozugo. Mbai na chebe dire rinni na mbozugo. Mbai na chebe dire amwamu na mbozugo. Ndị ọrụ n'ụjọ n'edibe o. Ihe na ọnwụ na-eme, ọnwụ bụ mberede.
When we examine most traditional African societies, we realize that most of these dirges were sung by women. This was partly because Dirges involved a lot of wailing, but most importantly because most of these societies which were patriarchal looked at this wailing and crying as something of a show of weakness, and men were not supposed to do it. In very special instances, when a man who was very important died, you found that some men were allowed to mourn the person, and they did this by singing very special songs. An example, if the person who had died was a hunter, then they could sing a hunting song. If the person who had died was a warrior, then they could sing a war song. This is why even now when someone very important dies, you realize that the men are going to be wearing this kind of war regalia, so that they show that the person who has died was very important, did great things, and also is going to be remembered for a very long time. Dirges are supposed to mourn the dead. They're supposed to tell us the great things the person has done. So one of the functions of Dirges was actually just to chronicle somebody's life, especially if someone had achieved great feats. Dirges also are sung to those who have been left behind, to tell them that the person who has died has gone to a better place. And in our situation, of course, to tell them that this person has just transited from this physical world to the realm of the ancestors. Dirges also play a religious function. It announces to the spirits and the gods that this physical world has accepted the fate of this person who has died, and so the gods and the spirits should welcome them to the other side. A very important feature that we see in most dirges is that they employ apostrophe. And as we've seen before, apostrophe is this situation where we are talking to someone who is dead and someone who cannot reply to what we're telling them. So you find that some of these dirges have questions that are directed toward the person who has died. We don't expect them to answer, but it is a very important situation there because it tells us that we actually recognize that this person has just left this world, but is actually listening to us in some way. So dirges in the traditional African society reminded us that life is short. So when we are alive, we should do everything possible to be just, to be fair, to be good, and most of all, to live this life with all the confidence that we can master.
Yawa parurulo, lowangetek, yawa parurulo, lowangetek. Ewoi gimicham emari gimodong tokirkigen. Ewoi gimicham emari gimodong tokirkigen. Choke joy, 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 joy.